Brief bit of background on me, 15 seconds, no more. I have a long background in media and publishing and working in content creation environments for very large media companies around the Asia-Pacific region. That's all you need to know about me. So, a long background in working out why audiences like content, what it is that they're interested in, etc. So, let's talk about what is this idea of content monetization. So the first point to touch on is that we are in a changing time, and we're in an era of relevance, an age of relevance. What does that mean? Well, the birth of user-generated content has been fantastic, but the downside of user-generated content is it's created a veritable ocean of content out there, and sometimes it's pretty hard to swim through it to find the stuff that you're really interested in. So we're increasingly now, when you look at the technology that's evolving, the types of businesses that are starting, we're moving into an era of helping you find the stuff that you are interested in, that is relevant to you. So much content from users and from media companies that it's just hard work. And we're starting to see a shift in business models, and for the last decade or so, the way that we find stuff on the internet is we type something into that little text box in the middle of the white screen from Google, and that has worked really well. But increasingly it's getting hard for even Google to be able to keep coming up with results that are relevant for you. So we believe that there's a fundamental shift in the way that the internet is working, and that this is evidenced by the rise of social media. Social search is what is now starting to happen, and the simple idea there, which I'll go through in a little more detail, is this notion that machine-based search will get you good results, but if you have a question, it's really quite possible that somebody within your social relationships, your connections, your friends, your professional colleagues, people you've done business with, may have an answer to that that might be spot on for what you are looking for. What we're seeing is that social search, the idea that if we share an interest or we are connected in some way, and I hear a question that you're asking and I may be able to give you an answer to that, that is a really powerful concept that is driving a real evolution. And what's coming out of that is the notion also that each of us have valuable expertise. Expertise which is about something that we're interested in, something that we've had experience in, and that increasingly it's our own expertise that's going to be the source of search results and indeed answers themselves. So there's a lot of jargon and ideas that seem a bit theoretical, but one of the most powerful ones that's emerging right now is the notion of the interest graph. What's the interest graph, you may well ask? There's me in the centre, and plotted on that is all the things I'm interested in. Sports, family, entertainment, all the different things that are of interest to me. And if I plot something similar for all of my friends and connections, and let's assume that you're all my friends and connections, if we did the same thing for each of you, we'd end up with something that looks a bit like that, which may seem like a mad jumble to you, but in fact is an incredibly valuable and powerful piece of information that computers are very well suited to disentangle. So here you have the network, the bowl of spaghetti, if you like, of all the relationships that connect me to other people via interests. And the fact that that lady in the back row and I may have worked together 5 years ago, and we share a common interest in a particular style of cooking, and we still share information on that, even though we otherwise maybe don't socialise. And the fact that the gentleman standing up the back there and I bumped into each other in a bait shop, and we were both buying bait to go fishing, and had never met each other, but he gave me a tip on a great fishing spot, and as a result of that we formed a very brief friendship. So you've got this idea of all these connections that provide a network that drive real power for how you can find out information in the future. And so what you have is this idea that in the real world, that's not me, we have a whole bunch of different relationships. And those relationships increasingly drive how we find information and how we share information. So whether it's a neighbour in my condo or a close friend, a work colleague or my sister, they are sources of information that are more relevant to me, more powerful, and at the end of the day, going to give me a better result. So the content monetization opportunity is in this convergence that we're seeing of relationships and interests that's helping people find better results and more relevant information. And underlying that is this idea that we're all content creators. Now, that content creation opportunity for you might be simply in knowing a source of information and being able to pass that on to somebody else. Simple point, content creation opportunity begins with the idea that each of us, each of you, are a content creator. Just think about that for a moment. What is your area of expertise? What do you have knowledge about that could be valuable to other people? Okay? So the opportunity lies in harnessing the expertise that everybody has. So let's go on to the idea, the other side of monetizing content just for a moment. So that's, if you like, where does the content come from? Where's the expertise? How do I sell the content? What about the buy side? And let's talk a little bit about, oh, hang on, I'll come back to that. Why will people pay for content? So our good friends Rupert Murdoch and Steve Jobs are doing a very good job for very large companies like News Corp and Apple, in monetizing content for big companies. So hands up anybody that's ever bought a song through iTunes. Okay, some of you. I hope the rest of you haven't been stealing it, because that's not right. Have any of you bought an app for your Android phone or your Motorola phone or your Apple phone? Yeah, okay. So the idea that people are paying for content is not a new one. And we're seeing now, certainly in the big media world with newspaper companies, this push towards reversing this trend that everything on the internet must be free. So let's think about why will people pay for content? We think that there are basically three conditions. If you're a content creator, you think you have some expertise that people will pay for, well, I would say to you that there are three conditions you need to meet before people will pay you any money for your expertise. They are, first and foremost, it's got to be relevant to what they're looking for. Secondly, it's scarce and valuable. It's something that they can't necessarily get elsewhere. And third, that there's a convenient and easy way for them to access that. So we're going to go through these in a little bit more detail, because if you're contemplating how you might monetize your valuable expertise, these are the conditions you need to think about. So, first thing, interesting and relevant. People won't pay for content that doesn't pass a basic test of it meeting their need. Whether it's what I want, it's what I'm looking for, it's what I'm interested in. So you've got a lot of large media companies that have been experimenting with putting up paywalls and different monetization models, and in many cases they have failed because the general news content that they may be trying to monetize is not particularly relevant and interesting to people. It's very generic content. We all have interests, and I've built a bunch of stereotypes. So whether it's a niche type of British dance music or a type of cooking or a football club or whatever it is, we all have interests that range from the very large, the macro, right down to the micro. And the dude up in the top right-hand corner is one of my favourites. So this is actually, that's not him, but this I know a person that his thing is building wooden model aeroplanes, and there's a blogger that writes a blog in the UK that publishes content on a very narrow area of expertise, which is he publishes plans on how to build wooden model aeroplanes. Now, 99% of you here will have absolutely no interest in that. But 1% of you, and certainly this guy, loves that. It's relevant to what he's looking for. So whether it's the micro or the macro, relevance and interest is the first place you have to start. Second thing, and again, some of this may seem pretty obvious, but it's surprising that people often overlook the obvious. And this point is pretty straightforward. People will not pay for a piece of content from one source that they can get from another source at a lower price or for nothing. People will pay for convenience, so there is a factor there about, you know, it may be something I can get elsewhere, but I need it right now. But let me just discount that just for a moment, and I'll come back to that shortly. So this is one of the reasons why, if you think about the way the media world is evolving now, general news content is now quite ubiquitous. It's everywhere. So in terms of what has happened today in Singapore, the rest of the world, we can turn on the radio, turn on the television, we can tune into a web browser, we can look on our mobile phones. Tomorrow morning we'll be able to buy the paper to find out what happened today. But general news content is ubiquitous, it's generic, it's everywhere. And that's one of the reasons why big media companies have great difficulty in getting people to pay for content, because why would I pay you if I can get it from somebody else for nothing? So what is it that makes content scarce and valuable? Well, there's a range of things. And these are things that I'll talk through in a little bit of detail. So, you can never really discount the value of the brand and tone and voice. So there is the idea that up to a certain point, a brand name will accrue a value because people like that brand. And what that generally means is the tone and voice, which tone and voice may not be a phrase you're familiar with, but it's kind of an editorial turn of phrase. So that talks about the tone in terms of the style of writing, the type of voice that you use in the writing. So up to a point, brand and tone and voice is something that is scarce and valuable. People accrue an interest towards one company over another. Unique, curated packaging. And the most obvious example of that is something like, I'm Australian, I like the cricket. StarHub has a cricket channel. So they have a channel that I can pay extra for that just has cricket. So I can't often get to see the cricket that I want to see on other channels, but if I'm prepared to pay StarHub, I can get the cricket content that I'm looking for. So there's an example of one style of unique curated content. The other style could be the way you package up text with pictures or pictures and video to create a unique piece of packaging. Privileged access, time and place. If we were able to access Warren Buffett's best stock tips for what's going to happen on the NASDAQ tomorrow, and we could do it this afternoon, so we could place our buy order for shares before the bell opens, would that be valuable to us? Is that kind of scarce? I think so. So the idea of either providing privileged access or providing access ahead of other people is a basis for creating scarcity in content. So these first three, up to a point, are kind of, if you like, product attributes. They're the way you package or put together the content. But then in these last two, we start to get into a different area, which comes down to that ascending scale of, you know, raw data, knowledge, opinion, experience, ultimately getting to wisdom, etc. Where expertise and knowledge, if it's in a niche area that is not generally available elsewhere, will become valuable over time. So I'm talking through all of these, and I'm hoping that each of you may be thinking about, again, your particular area of expertise, and we'll talk through some specific examples of that a little later, but how you could employ some of these attributes to make your content scarce and valuable.